At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
20th century writer Joseph Campbell popularized the notion that telling stories were one of the ways that humans found meaning in life. David Hosley has told many stories and been a part of many more. Author, journalist, television and film producer, educator, community leader, and now real estate developer. Hosley's journey has taken him the length and the breadth of California's Central Valley and has made him witness and actor in the evolution of our region. David joins us in partnership with the American Leadership Forum to share with us his observations on the evolution of our region and his thoughts on what the future may bring to our greater part of California. So the storytelling and leadership seem so central to your story. What's been so compelling to you about those issues?
Well, you can do a lot of things when you're telling a story. You can inform people and give them information that helps them make good decisions. You can persuade them of a perspective. Storytelling is a very powerful thing in our society and has been since mankind started. So it is something that is worth understanding, and I've enjoyed almost for my entire career doing that. I started as a journalist at the Paso Robles Daily Press when I was 14. So I got a real head start.
A 14-year-old?
I was on radio as well, doing sports statistics at halftime of high school football games. But I covered news and sports for that newspaper, and then my family moved to Vallejo, and I went to work for a radio station in Napa, and it just continued. And it's interesting because that's still a part of my life, and I'm involved with telling a story right now.
What's the story you're doing right now?
I'm working with the Center for Asian American Media as an executive producer for a documentary on Mas Masamoto, the farmer from Del Rey, south of Fresno, who wrote Epitaph for a Peach, probably the best known Japanese American author in the country. And we're looking at Mas as he is getting to the point where he's going to retire from running the farm, which is what he wrote about in Epitaph for a Peach, about the transition of generations from his father to himself. And now he's got his daughter coming aboard. So there's a little twist there in gender, and she's coming with modern ideas and org charts and all these different ways of thinking about family farming. And so it's a great story, and we're really looking forward to finishing that program later this year and having it in prime time on PBS.
Looking forward to it. But in truth, you are a man of many stories, lots of threads going on at the same time. And when you go back to your beginning, what first inspired you to take the path that you have in your life's journey?
I think like many, many people, it starts with your family, and my parents were both leaders. They were the first in their families to go to college. One came from Washington State with an ag background, my dad from Oregon. They were both raised by single mothers, so there was some strength there, I think, in those families. And we were encouraged to talk about current events at dinner time. We went to the library regularly when we were young. All those things that we know can give young people kind of a leg up. And both my folks were educators, my mom a teacher, and when the kids started coming in the baby boom years, she still was a piano teacher for much of her life. My dad an educator who went from a school principal to a superintendent of schools to a vice president of a college in his career. So I think that basis started it, but also the opportunity of growing up in small towns in Central California, where if you want to try something, like go on the radio or become a journalist when you're 14, you have a chance. And I think that I've always enjoyed, loved, and treasure our rural communities, and now they're under assault. And there's some people who want to put all our population in the urban areas and let those small towns dry up and go away. And so part of what I have done and continue to be interested in is life in small towns.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. I've heard that recently that there's actually a lot of interest, not just in California, but nationally, in the Central Valley and in those communities itself. Now, there's some pejorative labels that have been put on. I've heard one, which is the Appalachia of the West. Another is the Mississippi Delta of California. But there seems to be a growing interest in the status and future fortune of the Central Valley. What's the story with that?
Well, you can thank Carol Whiteside when she was the founding president of the Great Valley Center for convincing the federal government to do a study of the socioeconomic measures here in the valley. And she did this around 2000. And at that time, nobody was paying attention to the Central Valley. If somebody was running for president, they certainly weren't going to be coming to the Central Valley as they campaigned. We weren't getting much attention from foundations. We weren't getting our fair share of support from the federal government, and some people believe from the state government either. And by getting the data that made the case that the challenges we have here in the Central Valley were just as bad as in the Appalachians, things began to change. And so that was the beginning of a lot of good, hard work and some progress toward incredible challenges that we have here in the valley.
With your background and track record, you could go anywhere. What makes you care so much about that area?
Well, our family moved from the Bay Area to Atwater when I was 8 years old. So I spent 4 of my formative years. Those years between 8 and 12 are incredibly important for any young person. And I fondly remembered that time, a time of great freedom, of being able to go anywhere in town. Nobody locked their doors. You could do as well in school as your talent would take you. I was a paper boy for the Merced Sun Star, so I had walking around money. So even economically, I felt that that was a great time in my life. And then we moved to Paso Robles, another small agricultural community. It wasn't growing wine grapes at that point, Scott. It was mostly almonds and grain. But again, huge opportunity for somebody who was willing to try something new and learn new things and go with it. And so I had tremendous fondness for the rural parts of California from a very early age.
Now, when you went down to the Central Valley and took over the Great Valley Center as its CEO, in that experience, you're coming back as an adult now, and not that you had completely left, but it was a different vantage point. What did you learn about the region that you didn't know before?
Well, I had to apply my skills as a reporter because the valley had changed from the time that I lived there. And while I did cover some things in the valley when I was a news radio reporter in the Bay Area and managing public TV and radio stations there, I knew that I would not go far if I didn't spend some time really listening and observing before I came to conclusions about what the Great Valley Center would best be able to do to impact the outcomes here in the valley. So that's what I did. And
what did you learn?
Well, I learned that the Central Valley was not united, that there are multiple Central Valleys, and they're quite different.
Share with us a little bit more on that.
Well, I divided in 4, and I'll start with the southern part and go north. Kern County is really oriented toward Los Angeles. It is geographically massive, and it has a great deal of poverty there, but it has one thing that no other part of the valley does: oil. And so its economy is different and differently oriented. In the same way we have people every weekday going over the Altamont Pass, and we have a western orientation in the center part of the valley, the people there have a southern orientation. And so they're somewhat different from the rest of the valley, and maybe because of that, not wonderful on collaboration.
What are the other 2?
Well, then you have the rest of the San Joaquin Valley. And from Stockton down, you have some of the poorest parts of the entire United States. And whether you're talking about car theft or you're talking about people defaulting on mortgages, there's adequate data. The education levels are low, and the diversity is high. And so that area is different from both to the south and to the north. You come to Sacramento, Sacramento's 6 counties, and they're unusual. That's what I found out, that the time I had spent here at KVIE and being active in the community.
And we should note that you were the former general manager of
Yes.
KVIE.
Yes, for a decade, taking it through the digital transition in partnership with David Lowe, who succeeded me. Only when I left did I realize how much progress had been made from 2000 to 2008 in working together as a region. And you could thank SACOG for that, and the blueprint projects that they and did with Valley Vision, and of course the station did all the videos for those. This is regional planning on transportation, but during that process we found out, and I think that the Council of Government, the transportation planning agency for this region, found out it's not disconnected. You're talking about economics impacts, you're talking about the way people live their lives, you're talking about being able to get fresh fruit from the outlying agricultural areas into the inner city. All of those things in Sacramento during that period came together, and when I went to the Great Valley Center, I found out it hadn't happened that way in the San Joaquin Valley.
Which raises a really interesting issue that is a regular conversation among some that look at regionalism. And you've been a big proponent of regionalism for a long time.
A broadcaster has to, because of the size of your signal. We think big because we have all those peoples in these different places who are watching.
The conversation, I'd love to get your reaction to this, is that what's considered to be the metropolitan Sacramento area, there are some who are consistently pushing to say, no, we're actually a bigger region than that, and we need to go southward into San Joaquin and think actually more like a broadcaster and say that the commonalities are broader than what's traditionally been thought of as the metropolitan Sacramento area. Reaction to that?
Well, there's a book talking about mega regions, and so it describes a mega region that starts in the Bay Area and the Monterey Peninsula and comes up through San Francisco and Marin County and comes around over here to Sacramento and goes down to Stockton. Some people would include Modesto in that mega region as well. We have so much to gain from working well together across boundaries, and there's everything to recommend that the Sacramento region should up its game tremendously on working with Stockton and the Bay Area, and I would throw in as well Modesto and possibly even Fresno. We have 2 dynamic political leaders in Kevin Johnson and Ashley Swearingen in Fresno. They're about the same age. We've dropped down a generation in political leadership in these communities. It's a natural that they should collaborate together. But there's not enough of that going on, and we need to get better at it. Regional collaboration has improved, Scott, and particularly the blueprint that was started here. Well, the San Joaquin Valley did one with all 8 counties in that blueprint process several years after the one here was completed. By then, the housing bust had started, and it gave time for the elected officials and the professional staff in planning to put forward the idea that we should absorb the majority of our population in our current urban areas as our population almost doubles over the next 25 or 30 years. That was a hard sell in the San Joaquin Valley. Too many of the communities were just looking, and their elected officials were just looking at their own city. It was hard for them even to act in collaboration and planning for the future as a county. Trying to do it for 8 counties took an incredible amount of work, and there were big bumps along the way, but eventually a blueprint was adopted for the entire San Joaquin Valley, and then 3 of the northern state counties actually ended up doing plans as well, with the best one being done in Shasta County.
Now, it's interesting when you talk about the challenges and the additional hurdles to get to collaboration, and there's a conversation that confuses me a little bit, and that is, on the one hand, the Central Valley is described as the Appalachia of the West, California's Mississippi Delta, and the statistics tell a tale that is very challenging. However, at the same time, the Central Valley is still known and as the breadbasket of the United States. And the farm to fork culture, really, if there was a nuclear reactor to the farm to fork movement, it is the Central Valley. And so there's a tremendous amount of activity at the same time. What's the disconnect between almost this upstairs, downstairs set of facts related to the same geography?
Well, you have to look at what the real challenge is in the Central Valley and its education levels. We have tens of thousands of people who are living in the Central Valley who never went further than 5th grade or 8th grade in Mexico. We have indigenous people from Mexico who aren't fluent in Spanish or English. They're speaking an Indio language. And sometimes these people aren't readily known. If you live in a big city, you may not see them, come in contact with them. But the diversity that we have and the kind of people who are attracted to support agriculture results in a pretty big challenge on the education front. Some of the immigrants who came because of Pol Pot's regime or because of the Vietnam War, who are here in great numbers in the Central Valley, also came with almost no education in the country where they were raised. You think that, okay, it'll be like all other American success stories. First generation will be challenged, second will work hard and get educated, right, and the third will be spoiled and live in the suburbs and not be able to speak the language of their grandparents. I don't think that's going to happen for a number of these groups because they're not able at this point to be able to access the educational levels that they need to go and get the jobs that we're going to have in the future.
What's the disconnect with our education system?
Well, we're underfunding it, and I think that's a message that's being heard loud and clear at this point. I was lucky enough to grow up in an education system in California in the 1960s in which it was one of the top in the country. We invested in it, and we had the good results because of it. We've been starving it for a long time. That's not a new story to anybody.
You work, though, for the newest institution in the UC system, right?
Yes.
UC Merced.
Yep.
Well, someone had to spend some money to create that. What was that? What did that experience inform you of?
Well, it has been and will be a huge difference maker on a number of levels. The decision in the 1990s to do something that had been talked about for quite a while, which was to put a UC campus in the Valley as an igniter, came to fruition almost a decade ago. And I was fortunate enough to serve it in several different capacities over the last 6 years. And it now has 8,000 students. 80% of them are of color. 60% of them are first in family to go to college. And almost that percentage are coming from families living in poverty. And so this has the great potential to be the accelerator that we need. Here's the funny thing, Scott. Everybody thought that the kids would go to UC Merced would be from the Valley. And actually, when you can go and fill out these forms online, you can check as many UC campuses as you want to, right? And so the college-bound rates in the Central Valley have gone way up due to hard work, but also to the availability of UC Merced. And they're going to Berkeley in greater numbers, and San Diego, and UC Santa Cruz, and so forth. The other part of that is, there are a lot of kids who live in the Bay Area and Southern California who wanted to go to UC Merced because it's different from the other campuses, and it's fabulous because a third of the students at UC Merced are from the Bay Area, about a quarter from Los Angeles.
Bringing in a lot of new energy.
A lot of energy, and if we're smart, we will develop internships for all these college students who are here in our universities in the Valley, and keep them here when they graduate because it's that educated workforce that we desperately need in the future to succeed.
Now, one of your assignments related to UC Merced was at this research facility, the Sierra Nevada
Research Institute,
which is near Yosemite, I guess, or studies.
It's on
Yosemite?
campus, but it has a natural reserve in Wawona in Yosemite. And it has fabulous programs in connection with the National Park Service, including a leadership institute for people who are managing parks and open spaces around the world to come together for a couple of weeks to learn about running national parks.
Did you ever focus on or spend any time looking at the discussions surrounding the use of Yosemite at all?
We did not get into the issues about the master planning for Yosemite. What the faculty at the Sierra Nevada Research Institute are doing, and there are 32 of them now, they're looking at things like climate warming. They're looking at precipitation and whether it falls as rain or snow and how you can best manage that rain or snow when it's coming down our way into the valley through this great river system that we benefit from. They look at soil and how we can have the best soils available to continue this domination of agriculture that the valley's done. So I was working more on that aspect as a support person on the staff side for these faculty.
So I want to bring us back northward to this region. So you've been down in the Central Valley for a while. You're back in Davis now. You've arrived in this part of the region yet again.
Right.
What's different today than when you left it?
Well, a lot of good has happened in the 6 years that Gail and my wife Gail Yamada and I have been living in Modesto and working in Merced. We have seen the benefit of the regional collaboration that was started around the blueprint and has just kept going with one initiative after another, often involving Valley Vision, the American Leadership Forum, key support from our major universities in the Sacramento region. And that is unusual, and it may be the best regional collaboration in the entire state of California.
Really?
And we should celebrate it. And I think when you live here, you don't realize what good things are happening. A second thing that is amazing to me is that the business community of the Sacramento region have found ways to be supportive of education so that they are now linked at a very high level. And I'm hopeful that that's going to result in improved educational outcomes here, because every business person, and I would go on to say every resident of this region, has a stake in this group of young people who are in our K-12 programs and our community colleges and our four-year schools succeeding wildly, because this is what's going to happen, Scott. People like me are exiting at an alarming rate out of the workplace. I think it's a boomer is retiring every second in the United States. We're just getting started on this, but even the trailing boomers are going to be out of here in about a dozen years. This was a large group of people. They had a high work ethic, and they had very good education successes. They will be replaced by a smaller group of people who have come through the system during a recession, with 25% high school dropout rates during that period of time, and will in many cases not have achieved the skills that will be required for the available positions going forward. I actually ran a plot line against the workforce we need going forward and our success. And the good news is we are having academic success. The outcomes are improving. You know that the dropout rate has been knocked down to 20. Mm-hmm. We need it to be in single digits if we're going to have that workforce going forward. And my shorthand is, and we need every young person in school today to go 2 years longer than the generation before them. So don't drop out of high school. If you do graduate from high school, go get a certificate or an AA degree from a community college, or transfer or go originally to a four-year school. And then the last shortage that we're facing in our workforce for 2025, we don't have enough people with advanced degrees. We're going to have 200,000 vacant healthcare positions in the Central Valley in 2025, according to the Public Policy Institute of California. It's 1 million over the whole state because we don't have the educational levels for those jobs.
And as those jobs present themselves, if they're not filled by the people that live in these communities, where do they go?
Well, we tried importing people, but we're not doing much of that anymore. So it's not like we're going to get an infusion of people from other countries who are going to come and fill that need. And California has some things going on in the way we tax people and the business climate where we may not be bringing in people at the rate we once did to California, this golden place that was providing innovation for the entire country during the whole dot-com run-up.
If there, in our final moments, very quickly, if there was one thing that you wish, based on your experience, that the Central Valley and the region would focus on and tackle, what would it be?
Raise the funds to assure that every child in 3rd grade in California and the Central Valley is able to read at grade level. It is the one biggest indicator of success later on in life.
And we're going to leave it there. That's our show. Thanks to our guest and thanks to you for watching Studio Sacramento. I'm Scott Syfax. See you next time right here on KVIE.
At 5 Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
All episodes of Studio Sacramento, along with other KVIE programs, are available to watch online at kvie.org/video.